In this video, we are going to dive deep into one of the most powerful revolutions in entire human history, the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution is important because it fundamentally transformed how societies produce goods, organize work, and structure economic and social life. Its effects reshaped the modern world in ways that continue to influence technology, politics, and daily living. And if you love economic history like I do, this channel is for you. Imagine you are sitting in complete darkness. There is nothing around you except the tiny flickering light of a single candle. That small flame is dancing in the black, and it represents everything your world runs on. No light switches, no cars, no phones, no machines humming in the background. Just that one small flame, muscle power, and the forces of nature. Now I want you to imagine something even more incredible. In the year 1700, nearly every single person on Earth lived in a world that would be almost unrecognizable to you today. They woke up when the sun rose. They worked until their bodies gave out. They went to sleep when darkness fell. And here is the really mind-blowing part. Their great-great-great-grandparents lived almost the exact same way. For thousands of years, human life barely changed at all. But then something happened. Something so profound and so rapid that it changed everything about how humans live, work, eat, travel, and think. In just 100 years, the entire world transformed. We call this transformation the Industrial Revolution, and every single thing you see around you right now, from the device you are watching this on to the chair you are sitting in to the building you are inside, exists because of what happened during those incredible years. This is not just a story about machines and factories. This is a story about people. Real people whose lives were turned completely upside down. Some of them became rich beyond imagination. Others suffered in ways that are hard to even comprehend today. And all of them were caught up in a wave of change that nobody could stop and nobody fully understood. So let me take you back to a world lit only by candles and campfires. Back to a time when making a single shirt took one person 500 hours of back-breaking work. Back to the moment right before everything changed forever. Life in 1700. Let me introduce you to someone. His name is Thomas, and he is about as ordinary as a person can be in the year 1700. Thomas is a farmer, and that is important because 90% of all people alive are farmers just like him. Thomas has never been more than 10 miles from the village where he was born. He has never traveled faster than a horse can run. He cannot read or write, and unless something remarkable happens, he will die around age 35, probably from an infection that today we could cure with simple antibiotics. Thomas wakes up every morning when the rooster crows. There is no alarm clock because there are no clocks in his house at all. Actually, let me be more specific. Thomas does not really have a house in the way you think of one. He has a small cottage with a dirt floor, no windows with glass, and a roof made of straw that leaks when it rains. His entire family, maybe 6 or 7 people, all sleep in the same room. When winter comes, they might bring their animals inside just to share the body heat. Thomas walks outside, and the world is quiet in a way that is almost impossible for us to imagine now. There are no cars rumbling past, no airplanes overhead, no distant hum of machinery, just birds singing, maybe a cow mooing somewhere, the wind rustling through trees. The loudest sound Thomas will hear all day is probably the church bell ringing. His day is entirely shaped by muscle power. Everything that needs to be done must be done by human hands or animal strength. Thomas needs to plow his field. He walks behind an ox that pulls a wooden plow through the dirt. This takes hours of exhausting work. He needs to plant seeds. He bends down and pushes each seed into the soil by hand. He needs to harvest wheat. He swings a scythe back and forth, cutting stalks one at a time until his back screams in pain and his hands are covered in blisters. His wife and daughters spend their entire day making thread and cloth. Let me tell you exactly how long this takes because the number is shocking. To make enough thread to weave one shirt, a woman must sit at a spinning wheel and spin for about 500 hours. That is not a typo. 500 hours for one shirt. She is spinning thin fibers of wool or flax into thread, and this process is so slow and so tedious that making clothes is one of the most expensive things a family does. This is why Thomas owns exactly 2 shirts, one to wear while the other is being washed. Thomas eats the same basic meals almost every single day. Bread, porridge, maybe some cheese if he is lucky. Vegetables from his small garden. Meat is a rare luxury, maybe at Christmas or Easter. He drinks ale instead of water because the water in his village is often contaminated and makes people sick, though Thomas does not understand why. Nobody has discovered germs yet. When the sun goes down, Thomas has no choice but to stop working. He cannot afford enough candles to light his house, and besides, candles are made from animal fat and they stink when they burn. So his family sits in the dark, or maybe by the light of the fire, and they go to bed early because there is nothing else to do. No books to read, no entertainment, just sleep, so they can wake up and do the same thing all over again tomorrow. Now here is what really matters. Thomas is not special. He is not unusually poor or unlucky. This is just normal life for almost everyone on Earth. From China to India to Africa to Europe to the Americas, most people live almost exactly like Thomas. They farm. They make everything by hand. They live and die within a few miles of where they were born. The world of 1700 is a world of limits, where everything is constrained by how much work human and animal muscles can do. The old power sources. But humans are clever. We have always looked for ways to make work easier. By 1700, we have discovered a few ways to use natural forces instead of just our muscles. Let me show you what was powering the world back then. First, there are water wheels. Imagine a big wooden wheel with buckets or paddles attached to it. You place this wheel in a river where the current is flowing fast. The moving water pushes against the paddles and makes the wheel spin. That spinning motion can be connected to machines inside a mill, and suddenly you can grind grain into flour or saw logs into planks without using human muscle. This is amazing technology for 1700, but water wheels have serious problems. You can only build them next to rivers that flow fast enough and steady enough. That means you cannot choose where to put your mill. You have to go wherever the river is. Also in winter, rivers freeze. When that happens, your water wheel stops turning and your mill shuts down. You are stuck waiting for spring. And in summer, if there is a drought, the river might slow to a trickle and your water wheel barely turns at all. Then there are windmills. These work on the same basic idea, except now wind is turning your wheel instead of water. You have probably seen pictures of those classic Dutch windmills with 4 big arms covered in cloth. The wind blows, the arms turn, and inside the mill there are gears and shafts that transfer that spinning motion to grindstones or other machines. But windmills have the same fundamental problem as water wheels. You are completely dependent on nature. If the wind stops blowing, your mill stops working. You cannot control it. You cannot schedule it. You just have to wait and hope the wind picks up again. Some days there is too much wind, and your windmill spins so fast it might break apart. Other days there is no wind at all, and nothing happens. So water and wind can help, but they are unreliable. They work when nature cooperates, and they stop when nature does not feel like it. That brings us to the most important power source in 1700. Animals: horses, oxen, donkeys, mules. These creatures are the engines of the pre-industrial world. A horse can pull a plow or a cart. An ox can turn a mill wheel by walking in circles hour after hour. But animals have their own limitations. They need to be fed, and feeding a horse requires growing crops that humans could otherwise eat. They get tired and need rest. They get sick. They eventually grow old and die and must be replaced. And then, of course, there is human muscle power. Most work in 1700 is still done by people using nothing but their own bodies. Digging ditches, carrying loads, hammering metal, sewing clothes, building houses, rowing boats. All of this is powered by human beings working until exhaustion. The fundamental problem with all of these power sources is that they are limited. There is only so much work a human can do, only so much a horse can pull, only so much wind that blows or water that flows. And because power is limited, production is limited. Making things takes forever. Making things costs a fortune. Only wealthy people can afford nice possessions. Everyone else makes do with the bare minimum. This is the bottleneck that keeps humanity trapped in place. We have been stuck at roughly the same level of technology and wealth for centuries. Progress is incredibly slow because we cannot generate enough power to do more work. The stage is set. So why am I telling you all this? Because to understand why the Industrial Revolution happened, you need to understand what the world was like before it happened. You need to feel the frustration of that limitation. And you need to understand why one country in particular was perfectly positioned to break through that bottleneck. That country is Britain. Or more specifically, England, Scotland, and Wales together. Now you might be wondering, why Britain? It is just a rainy island off the coast of Europe. It is not even that big. What makes Britain special? Well, it turns out that several things are coming together at exactly the right time in exactly the right place. Think of it like ingredients in a recipe. Individually, each ingredient is useful, but when you combine them all together, something magical happens. First ingredient, coal. Britain has massive amounts of coal buried underground. Coal is ancient compressed plant matter that burns hot and long. It is basically stored energy from millions of years ago. Other countries have coal too, but Britain has a lot of it, and much of it is relatively close to the surface where it can be mined. Second ingredient, population growth. Britain's population is increasing rapidly. More people means more mouths to feed, more bodies to clothe, more customers to buy things. This creates demand. Demand creates opportunity for anyone who can figure out how to make more stuff more quickly. Third ingredient, money. Britain has been building a global trading empire. British ships are sailing to the Americas, to Africa, to India, bringing back cotton, sugar, tobacco, and other valuable goods. Some British merchants and landowners are getting rich from this trade. They have money to invest in new ideas and new technologies. Fourth ingredient, culture. British society in the 1700s is starting to reward inventors and entrepreneurs. If you create something useful, you can get wealthy. Social class still matters a lot, but there is more opportunity for clever people to rise up than in many other countries. The government even starts granting patents, which means if you invent something, you have exclusive rights to profit from it for a certain number of years. This makes people want to invent things, so you have coal, population growth, money, and a culture that encourages innovation. But there is one more ingredient, and this is the problem that will actually trigger the revolution. Remember all that coal I mentioned? Coal is incredibly valuable because it burns hotter than wood. You can use it to heat homes, to make iron, to power all sorts of industrial processes. There is just one problem. The coal is buried deep underground in mines, and mines have a terrible habit of flooding. See, when you dig down into the earth, you eventually hit the water table. Underground water seeps into your mine tunnels. The deeper you dig, the more water pours in, and if you cannot pump that water out, the mine floods, and you cannot get to the coal anymore. So how do you pump water out? In 1700, you do it with horses. You have horses walking in circles above ground, turning a wheel that is connected to a pump down in the mine. The pump sucks up water and pours it out. But here is the problem that is becoming desperate by the early 1700s. The mines are getting deeper. Water is flooding in faster. You would need hundreds of horses working constantly to keep the deepest mines from flooding. It is becoming economically impossible. British mine owners are tearing their hair out over this problem. They have all this valuable coal underground. They have customers willing to pay for it, but they cannot get to it because of the water. They need a better pump. They need more power. They need someone to invent a solution. And that brings us to the moment when everything changes. The steam engine is born. The year is 1712. A man named Thomas Newcomen, who is an ironmonger and a blacksmith, is staring at a flooded coal mine. He has been thinking about this problem for years, and finally, he has built something that nobody has ever successfully built before. He has built a working steam engine. Now, Newcomen did not invent the idea of using steam. People had been playing with steam power for decades, even centuries. But nobody had made a practical, reliable engine that could actually do useful work. Newcomen is the first. Let me explain how his engine works, and I promise to keep this simple. Imagine you have a large cylinder, like a big metal tube. Inside that cylinder is a piston, which is a flat disc that can move up and down. At the bottom of the cylinder you have a boiler, which is basically a big kettle that you heat with a coal fire. Here is what happens. You burn coal under the boiler. The water inside the boiler gets hot, really hot. So hot that it turns into steam. That steam is under pressure because it is trapped inside the boiler. You open a valve and let the steam rush up into the cylinder. The steam pushes the piston up. Then, and this is the clever part, you spray cold water into the cylinder. The steam suddenly condenses back into water. This creates a vacuum, an empty space with very low pressure. The atmospheric pressure outside the cylinder pushes the piston back down with tremendous force. You attach this piston to a rocking beam, and the beam is connected to a pump down in the mine. Every time the piston goes up and down, the pump goes up and down, up and down, up and down, hour after hour. All day and all night if you want. As long as you keep the fire burning and the water boiling, the engine keeps pumping. And it works. Newcomen's engine can pump more water out of a mine than 100 horses could. Mine owners are thrilled. Finally, they can dig deeper for coal. Finally, they can keep their mines from flooding. The engine spreads to mines all over Britain and eventually to other parts of Europe. But Newcomen's engine has a problem. It is slow. Each stroke of the piston takes several seconds, and it is wasteful. Every time you spray cold water into the cylinder to condense the steam, you cool down the whole cylinder. Then you have to heat it up again with new steam. You are wasting enormous amounts of coal heating and cooling the cylinder over and over. For pumping water out of mines, this is acceptable. Mine owners have lots of cheap coal right there at the mine. But the engine is too inefficient to use for much else. It cannot power factories or transportation. It is a one-trick pony. Fast forward to 1769. A Scottish instrument maker named James Watt is asked to repair a model of a Newcomen engine at the University of Glasgow. While working on it, Watt has a revelation. He realizes what the fundamental problem is. The cylinder is being cooled and heated over and over, and all that cooling and heating is wasting fuel. What if you could keep the cylinder hot all the time? Watt's brilliant idea is to add a separate condenser. Instead of spraying cold water into the cylinder, you open a valve and let the steam escape into a different chamber where it condenses. The cylinder itself stays hot. You have just eliminated the biggest source of waste. Watt also makes other improvements. He makes the engine double acting, meaning steam pushes the piston both up and down instead of just up. He adds a governor that automatically controls the speed. He adds gears that can convert the up and down motion into rotating motion. The result is an engine that uses 75% less coal than Newcomen's engine, while producing more power and running faster. This is not just an improvement, this is a revolution, because now you have an engine that is efficient enough and powerful enough to drive any kind of machine. Not just mine pumps, anything, spinning wheels, weaving looms, hammers, saws, anything that needs power. For the first time in human history, we have a power source that is not limited by muscles or nature. We have an engine that can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as long as you feed it coal. And remember, Britain has plenty of coal. The age of the machine has begun. Cotton, the first industry transformed. Now you might think that mine owners would be the first people to adopt the steam engine, and they do. But the real explosion happens in a different industry entirely, the cotton industry. Remember how I told you that making a shirt took 500 hours of hand spinning? That was not an exaggeration. Making thread from raw cotton or wool was painfully slow. A woman sat at a spinning wheel, taking a clump of fluffy fibers and twisting them into a single thin thread. It required constant attention, skilled hands, and endless patience. One person could make maybe one thread at a time. This was the bottleneck in making cloth. Raw cotton was cheap. Weaving was relatively fast, but spinning the thread in between was so slow that it limited how much cloth could be made. Britain was importing cotton from its colonies in India and the Americas, but British spinners could not keep up with demand. The country was literally running out of thread. So inventors started working on the problem. And over about 20 years, they created a cascade of inventions that completely transformed the industry. First comes James Hargreaves in 1764 with something called the spinning jenny. Instead of spinning one thread at a time, his machine can spin 8 threads at once. Then 16, then eventually even more. One person can now do the work of 8 people. This is incredible. But the spinning jenny still requires human power. You work it by turning a wheel by hand. It is faster than the old spinning wheel, but it is still limited by human muscle. Then comes Richard Arkwright in 1769. He invents the water frame, which is a spinning machine powered by a water wheel. No human muscle needed. It spins thread faster and makes stronger thread than the spinning jenny. But it has to be built next to a river. Then in 1779, Samuel Crompton combines the best features of both previous inventions and creates the spinning mule. It makes thread that is both fine and strong. It can be powered by water or by humans. It is so good that it becomes the dominant spinning machine for decades. Now watch what happens. Thread production explodes. What used to take 500 hours can now be done in 5 hours. The price of thread collapses. Suddenly thread is so cheap and so abundant that the bottleneck shifts to a different part of the process. Now there is not enough weaving. You have all this thread, but not enough weavers to turn it into cloth. So in 1785, Edmund Cartwright invents the power loom, a weaving machine that can be powered by water or steam instead of human hands. Within 40 years, every major step in making cloth has been mechanized. What used to take dozens of skilled workers weeks of time can now be done by machines in a single day. The result is transformative. Cotton cloth becomes so cheap that even poor people can afford it. Everyone starts wearing cotton clothes instead of scratchy wool or expensive silk. Britain becomes the textile workshop of the world. British cotton cloth is exported to every continent. But there is another result too, and this one is more complicated. All those hand spinners and hand weavers, they are losing their jobs. A woman who has spent her entire life developing the skill of spinning finds out that her skill is now worthless. A machine can do in 1 hour what took her all week, and the machine does not need to eat or sleep or be paid very much. Thousands of skilled workers find themselves suddenly unemployed. Many of them are angry. Some of them will eventually smash machines in protest, but we will come to that later. Right now, something even bigger is happening. The way work itself is organized is about to change forever. The factory system emerges here as something you need to understand about work before the Industrial Revolution. Most people worked at home. That spinning I talked about, women did it in their cottages. Weaving, men set up looms in their houses or small workshops. Blacksmiths worked in their own forges. Shoemakers worked in their own shops. This was called the domestic system or the putting out system. A merchant would drop off raw materials at your house. You would work on them at your own pace, on your own schedule. When you were done, the merchant would come back, collect the finished goods, pay you, and bring you more raw materials. You were your own boss. You worked when you wanted, stopped when you wanted, took breaks when you felt like it. But then the machines arrive. And these machines change everything about how work is organized. Why? Because the new machines are huge and expensive. A power loom weighs hundreds of pounds and costs more than a worker could ever afford. And the machines need power. They need to be connected to a water wheel or a steam engine. You cannot just stick a steam engine in your cottage. It would burn your house down. So someone, usually a wealthy merchant or entrepreneur, decides to build a factory. A factory is a large building, usually multiple stories tall, where dozens or even hundreds of machines are all housed together. A big water wheel or steam engine provides power, and that power is distributed throughout the building using belts and pulleys and gears. The first true factories appear in the 1770s and 1780s. One of the very first is built by Richard Arkwright at a place called Cromford in 1771. Let me describe what this building is like because it represents a completely new way of organizing human labor. The Cromford Mill is a massive brick building, 5 stories tall. On each floor, there are rows and rows of spinning machines. In the basement, a huge water wheel turns constantly, powered by a river that has been diverted to flow right past the building. Shafts and gears carry that power up through the building to every floor. Belts connect the shafts to the machines. When the water wheel turns, everything turns. All the machines run at the same time, in the same rhythm, unstoppable. And standing at those machines are workers, hundreds of them. Their job is to feed raw cotton into the machines, watch for threads that break, tie broken threads back together, and keep everything running smoothly. They are not making thread themselves. The machines are making thread. The workers are serving the machines. This is a completely different relationship between human and work. In the old domestic system, you controlled the tool. You decided when to spin, how fast to spin, when to rest. The tool served you. In the factory, the machine sets the pace. You serve it. The machine runs at a constant speed, and you must keep up. If you slow down, you fall behind. If you make a mistake, the foreman yells at you. If you need a break, too bad. The machine does not stop. And here is the other thing. Factories need discipline. Everyone must arrive at the same time. A bell rings or a whistle blows, and you must be at your station ready to work. The machines start running at 6 in the morning whether you are there or not. If you show up late, you get fined or fired. You work until the machines stop, usually 12 or 14 hours later. 6 days a week. No exceptions. This is shocking to people who are used to working at their own pace. For the first time in their lives, they are living by the clock instead of by the sun or by their own body's rhythm. The clock becomes the master. Being on time becomes crucial. The entire concept of being punctual is invented by factory discipline. Let me tell you the story of someone experiencing this change. Her name is Mary, and she is 14 years old. She has grown up on a farm where her family has worked for generations. But the farm is struggling. There are too many children and not enough land. Her parents have heard that factories are hiring, and the wages are better than farm work. So Mary leaves her village for the first time in her life. She travels to Manchester, an industrial city that is growing explosively. Everything is overwhelming. The noise, the smoke, the crowds. Buildings taller than she has ever seen. Streets packed with people and horses and carts. She gets a job at a cotton mill. On her first day, she is terrified. The noise inside the factory is deafening. Hundreds of machines clacking and whirring and spinning. People shouting to be heard over the din. The air is thick with cotton dust that makes her cough. The machines never stop moving, and she is afraid of getting her hair or her dress caught in the belts and gears. Her job is to walk up and down between rows of spinning machines, watching for threads that break. When one breaks, she must quickly tie the ends back together. This seems simple, but the machines move fast, and there are dozens of them. She must pay constant attention. If she daydreams or gets distracted, threads pile up broken and the foreman screams at her. At first, Mary finds the work exciting. She is earning her own money. She can buy things. She is living in a city. But after a few weeks, the reality sets in. Her body aches from standing 12 hours a day. Her hands are cut and calloused from tying rough cotton threads. The cotton dust irritates her throat and lungs. She's exhausted all the time. She shares a rented room with 6 other factory girls. They all sleep on the floor, packed together. There is no privacy, no comfort, but at least she is eating regularly and earning wages to send home to her family. This is the new reality for hundreds of thousands of British people. The factory is transforming not just work, but life itself. And this is only the beginning. Iron and steel, building the modern world. Now we need to talk about iron, because iron is going to be absolutely crucial to what happens next. Iron is the material that builds the modern world. Machines are made of iron. Tools are made of iron. Buildings will be supported by iron. Railways will be made of iron. Ships will be built from iron. You cannot have an industrial revolution without lots and lots of iron. But here is the problem Britain faces in the early 1700s. Making iron requires enormous amounts of heat. You need to melt iron ore, which is rock that contains iron mixed with other stuff. To melt it, you need to heat it to extremely high temperatures, around 1500 degrees. And to get those temperatures, you need fuel. For centuries, people made iron using charcoal, which is partially burned wood. Charcoal burns very hot, hot enough to smelt iron. But making charcoal requires cutting down trees. Lots and lots of trees. Britain has been making iron for so long that the country is running out of trees. Forests are disappearing. The price of charcoal is rising. Britain is facing an iron shortage at exactly the moment when the country needs more iron, not less, to build all these new machines. This is an environmental crisis that threatens to stop the entire industrial revolution before it really gets going. But then a breakthrough happens. In 1709, a man named Abraham Darby figures out how to smelt iron using coal instead of charcoal. Remember, Britain has massive coal reserves. This discovery means the country can make as much iron as it needs without cutting down any more forests. There is just one problem. Iron made with coal contains more impurities than iron made with charcoal. It is more brittle. It breaks more easily. It is good enough for making simple things like pots and railings, but it is not good enough for building machines or structures that need to bear heavy loads. For the next 100 years or so, Britain makes do with this lower quality iron. But engineers know there has to be a better way. There has to be a method to make iron that is strong and cheap at the same time. The answer comes in 1856 from a man named Henry Bessemer, and what he invents is going to change everything. It is called the Bessemer process, and it creates something even better than iron. It creates steel. Let me explain what steel is. Steel is basically iron with most of the impurities burned out and just a tiny bit of carbon added back in. This makes it much stronger than regular iron, but also more flexible. It does not break as easily. You can make thinner pieces that are just as strong. It is basically a super material. Before Bessemer, making steel was incredibly slow and expensive. Only rich people could afford steel swords or steel tools. But Bessemer figures out a way to make steel fast and cheap. Here is how the Bessemer converter works. You have a huge egg-shaped container made of heat-resistant material. You pour in molten iron that has been melted until it is liquid. Then you blast air through the molten iron from the bottom. The oxygen in the air reacts with the impurities in the iron and burns them away. This reaction is so intense that it actually makes the iron hotter, even though you are not adding any fuel. The impurities burn off as gas or form slag that floats to the top and can be skimmed off. The whole process takes about 20 minutes. 20 minutes to turn several tons of iron into high-quality steel. Before Bessemer, the same amount of steel would have taken days to make and cost 10 times as much. This is revolutionary. Suddenly, steel is cheap enough to use for everything. Britain's steel production increases 100-fold in just a few decades. Steel becomes the material of choice for building the modern world. What can you do with cheap, abundant steel? Anything. You can build bridges that span enormous distances without collapsing. You can construct buildings with steel frames that reach higher into the sky than any building in history. You can make better, stronger machines that work harder and last longer. You can build ships with steel hulls that are bigger and faster than wooden ships. You can make tools that stay sharp longer. And most importantly, you can build railways. Miles and miles of railway track. Because railway track needs to be strong enough to hold up under trains weighing hundreds of tons, traveling at high speeds, passing over the same spot thousands of times. Only steel can do that. Which brings us to the next transformation. The world is about to learn how to move fast. The railway revolution. Imagine you are living in 1804. You have never in your entire life moved faster than a horse can run. The fastest you have ever traveled is maybe 15 or 20 miles per hour, and that is if you are lucky enough to be riding a good horse at full gallop, which is exhausting for the horse and can only be maintained for a short time. Most travel is much slower. If you are walking, you go maybe 3 or 4 miles per hour. If you are in a wagon or a stagecoach on a bumpy dirt road, maybe 6 or 7 miles per hour. Traveling from London to Edinburgh, a distance of about 400 miles, takes 4 or 5 days on a stagecoach, and it costs a fortune, and you arrive exhausted and bruised from bouncing around on terrible roads. This is just how things are. This is how things have always been. Nobody expects it to change because nobody can imagine how it could change. Then a man named Richard Trevithick builds something that will change human transportation forever. He builds a steam locomotive. It is a steam engine on wheels that can pull a train of wagons. In 1804, Trevithick's locomotive makes its first journey at an ironworks in Wales. It pulls 10 tons of iron and 70 men for 9 miles. It travels at about 5 miles per hour, which does not sound fast. But remember, this machine does not get tired. It can keep going for hours, and more importantly, it proves that the concept works. Over the next 20 years, engineers improve the design. They make locomotives more powerful and more reliable. The breakthrough comes in 1825 when George Stephenson builds a locomotive called Locomotion No. 1. It pulls the first public railway line in the world, from Stockton to Darlington. This is not just an experiment anymore. This is actual transportation, paying passengers and freight. Then in 1829, Stephenson and his son build an even better locomotive called the Rocket. It can travel at 30 miles per hour. Let me say that again. 30 miles per hour. This is faster than any human has ever moved before, ever, in the entire history of our species. And people are terrified. There are doctors who seriously claim that traveling at such high speeds will drive people insane. They say the human body was not designed to move that fast. They say people's brains will not be able to cope with the scenery rushing past. They say pregnant women will miscarry. They say cows in fields next to the tracks will stop giving milk from the trauma of seeing trains go by. Of course, all of this is nonsense, but it shows you how revolutionary this technology is. People cannot wrap their minds around it. In 1830, the Liverpool to Manchester Railway opens. This is the first major railway line designed to carry both freight and passengers, and it is an instant success. Ticket prices are affordable enough that middle-class people can use it. Travel time between the two cities drops from 4 hours by stagecoach to 2 hours by train. The trains run on schedule. You can plan your journey. You know exactly when you will arrive. And then the explosion happens. Britain goes absolutely railway mad. Investors pour money into railway companies. Engineers survey routes across the entire country. Armies of workers, called navvies, dig tunnels through mountains and build bridges across valleys. They lay track across fields and through towns. In just 20 years, between 1830 and 1850, Britain builds 6,000 miles of railway track. That is like building a railway from New York to Los Angeles and back again. The entire geography of Britain is transformed. Cities that were once remote become connected. Rural areas are opened up, and the railways change everything about daily life. Let me count the ways. First, food. Before railways, cities could only eat food that was grown nearby, or food that could be preserved for long periods. Fresh milk, fresh vegetables, fresh meat. These were luxuries. But now trains can bring fresh food from farms hundreds of miles away and deliver it the same day. City dwellers can eat fresh fish caught on the coast that morning. They can drink milk from cows grazing in distant pastures. The diet of city people improves dramatically. Second, mobility. Workers can now live farther from their jobs. Suburbs start to develop around major cities. People can visit family in other cities. Tourism becomes possible for middle-class people, not just the rich. Ordinary people can visit the ocean or the mountains for the first time in their lives. Third, communication. Trains carry mail, fast. A letter that used to take a week to deliver now arrives in a day. News spreads rapidly. Everyone knows what is happening everywhere else. This creates a sense of national unity that did not exist before. Fourth, time. This is fascinating. Before railways, every town set its own clocks based on the sun. Noon was when the sun was highest in the sky, and that happens at slightly different times as you move east or west. Nobody cared about this difference because nobody traveled fast enough for it to matter. But railways need schedules. Trains need to leave and arrive at specific times. So Britain has to standardize time zones. Greenwich Mean Time becomes the official time for the entire country. This is the beginning of the global time zone system we use today. Fifth, economics. Railways are massive consumers of iron and steel. Every mile of track needs tons of metal rails. Building the railways drives massive demand for iron and steel, which creates jobs in iron foundries and steel mills, which drives more innovation in metalworking. The railways literally fuel their own expansion. And sixth, psychological. This is hard to explain, but important. When people can move fast, when they can see distant places, when they realize the world is more connected than they thought, it changes how they think. People start to feel like change is possible. Like the future might be very different from the past. Like old assumptions might be wrong. This openness to change, this willingness to embrace new ideas, becomes part of the culture. Let me introduce you to James. He is a railway navvy, one of the workers building these tracks across Britain. His job is brutal. He wakes before dawn and works until dark. He digs trenches through hard ground using nothing but a shovel and a pickaxe. He carries baskets of dirt on his back. He lays wooden ties and iron rails. He works in all weather, rain or shine, heat or cold. The work is dangerous. Tunnels collapse. Explosives go off unexpectedly. Workers fall from bridges being constructed. James has seen men die on the job. He has seen men crippled by accidents. But the pay is good, better than farm work, and James feels like he is part of something important. He is building the future. When he looks at a finished railway line stretching to the horizon, he feels pride. The railway is the symbol of the Industrial Revolution. It is progress made visible. It is speed and power and human ingenuity triumphing over distance and difficulty. And it is about to reshape the entire landscape of Britain in ways nobody anticipated. Cities explode. Here is what happens when you combine factories that need workers with railways that can transport people quickly. You get massive migration from the countryside to the cities. And I mean massive. Let me give you some numbers that will blow your mind. The city of Manchester in 1750 has about 25,000 people living in it. Not a tiny village, but not a major metropolis either. By 1850, 100 years later, Manchester has 400,000 people. The population has multiplied by 16. This is not growth, this is an explosion. And Manchester is not unique. Birmingham, Leeds, Glasgow, Sheffield, all of these industrial cities are experiencing the same explosive growth. Liverpool grows from 80,000 to 400,000. London, already a big city, grows from 1 million to over 3 million. Where are all these people coming from? The countryside. Remember Thomas the farmer from the beginning? His grandchildren are moving to the cities. Farming is changing too. Landowners are consolidating small farms into large estates. They are enclosing common lands that villagers used to share. Many rural people are being pushed off the land. They hear about jobs in the factories. They hear about wages paid in cash. They decide to take their chances in the city. So tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of people pack up their few belongings and move to industrial cities. They arrive with hope and desperation in equal measure. They need somewhere to live. They need it immediately. They cannot afford much. And this is where things get dark. The cities are completely unprepared for this wave of humanity. There is not enough housing, not even close. So what happens? Slums spring up overnight. Landlords throw up cheap buildings as fast as possible to cram in as many people as they can and extract as much rent as possible. Let me describe what these slums are like because it is important to understand just how terrible the conditions are. Buildings are packed together with barely any space between them. Streets are narrow. some so narrow that two people can barely walk side by side. There is no city planning, no building codes, no regulations, just chaos. A typical slum building, called a tenement, is 3 or 4 stories tall. Each floor is divided into tiny rooms. A single room, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, houses an entire family. Not just parents and children, sometimes grandparents too. Sometimes multiple families sharing one room. 10 or 12 people sleeping in the same space. There are no separate bedrooms. Everyone sleeps on the floor or on rough mattresses filled with straw. If you are lucky, you have a blanket. There is no running water inside the buildings, no bathroom in your room, no toilet. Maybe there is a single water pump shared by hundreds of people at the end of the street. Maybe. Often people have to walk several blocks to find water, and that water is not clean. It comes from rivers that are polluted with factory waste and human sewage. Where do people go to the bathroom? There is usually a shared privy, an outdoor toilet for every dozen or so families. Picture a wooden shack with a hole in the ground. No door, or maybe a broken door. It stinks beyond description. Flies everywhere. And it is constantly overflowing because it is shared by so many people. So human waste accumulates in the streets. Dogs and rats feed on it. Disease-carrying flies breed in it. When it rains, the waste washes into puddles and eventually seeps into the groundwater, contaminating the water supply. Garbage piles up everywhere. There is no garbage collection. People just throw their trash into the street or into the nearest ditch. Rotting food, dead animals, broken pottery, all of it festering together. The AIR is thick with smoke. Every factory has chimneys belching black coal smoke into the sky. Every home burns coal for heat and cooking. The smoke hangs over the city like a permanent fog. The sun barely penetrates. Buildings are coated in black soot. People's lungs are coated in black soot. Breathing the air is like smoking cigarettes all day, even though cigarettes have not been invented yet. The noise is constant. Factories running day and night, hammering from workshops, street vendors shouting, cartwheels clattering on cobblestones, crying babies, fighting drunks, barking dogs. There is never silence, never peace. These slums have names that tell you everything you need to know. Devil's Acre, Hell's Kitchen, the Rookeries, the Black Hole. These are neighborhoods where police are afraid to go, where disease is rampant, where life expectancy is shockingly low, and yet people keep coming. Why? Because even in these terrible conditions, there is work, there are wages. On the farm, you might have nothing. You might be starving. At least in the city, if you can survive the disease and the squalor, you have a chance to earn money. You have a chance to feed your family. This is the dark side of the Industrial Revolution, the gleaming machines and the railway lines and the explosion of productivity. All of this is built on the backs of people living in conditions that are almost unimaginably bad. And we have not even talked yet about what life is like inside the factories. That comes next. And it is even worse than you think. Factory life. The dark reality. Now we go inside the factories where all this production is happening, inside the mills and workshops where Britain is becoming the workshop of the world. And I need to warn you, what I am about to describe is hard to hear, but it is real. This is what life was actually like for millions of people. Let me start with the hours. A factory worker in 1830 typically works 14 hours a day. 14 hours of standing, walking, lifting, watching machines, from 6 in the morning until 8 at night, with 1 half-hour break for lunch. That is it. 6 days a week. Sunday off, supposedly, though some factories run 7 days. You cannot be late. If the morning bell rings at 6 and you arrive at 6:01, you get locked out. No work, no pay. Or worse, you get fined a day's wages for being 1 minute late. The discipline is strict. No talking, no singing, no sitting down even when your feet are screaming in pain. The foreman walks up and down watching everyone. If he thinks you are slacking, he hits you with a strap or docks your pay. The temperature inside the factories is extreme. In textile mills, they keep the air hot and humid on purpose because cotton threads break less easily in damp conditions. So you are working in 90-degree heat with high humidity, breathing air thick with cotton dust for 14 hours. People faint from heat exhaustion regularly. In iron foundries, the heat is even worse. The furnaces burn at thousands of degrees. Workers stand close to those furnaces, feeding in coal, pouring out molten metal. The heat is so intense it burns exposed skin. Men work shirtless and still sweat so much they become dehydrated. In winter, other factories are freezing. No heating except what comes off the machines. Workers wrap themselves in whatever they can find. Their fingers go numb, making it hard to tie threads or operate equipment. Frostbite is common. The machinery is incredibly dangerous and there are no safety guards. Nothing protecting you from the moving parts. Spinning wheels, belts and gears, pulleys and chains, all of it moving fast. If your hair gets caught in a spinning machine, it rips your scalp off. This happens regularly to women and girls with long hair. If your sleeve gets caught in a belt, it pulls your arm into the machinery and crushes it. If you stumble and fall into the gears, you are mangled to death in seconds, and the machines do not stop. They cannot stop. Someone has to reach in and pull out your body or what is left of it while everything keeps running. Factory owners do not care about safety. They care about production. Stopping a machine to help an injured worker means lost production time, lost money. So often, injured workers are just dragged away and someone else takes their place immediately. There is no compensation if you are hurt, no insurance, no medical care provided. If you lose an arm in a factory accident, you lose your job because you can no longer work. Now you and your family starve. This is why you see so many beggars in industrial cities with missing limbs. Factory accidents. The AIR inside factories is toxic. Cotton mills are filled with dust. Tiny fibers float everywhere, get into your lungs with every breath. Coal mines have coal dust. Chemical factories have toxic fumes. Workers develop terrible lung diseases. They cough constantly. They cough up black phlegm. Many die in their 30s from lung failure. And then there are the children. The horror of child labor. This is the part that is hardest to talk about, because British factories in the early to mid-1800s employ thousands of children. Not teenagers, young children, some as young as 5 years old. Why children? Several reasons, all of them terrible. First, children are small. They can crawl under running machines to pick up fallen cotton or fix broken threads. They can fit into spaces adults cannot. Second, children are obedient. They do what they are told without talking back. Third, children can be paid almost nothing. Maybe a tenth of what an adult earns, maybe less. So factory owners actively want child workers. They recruit children from poor families. They recruit orphans from workhouses. They promise parents that their children will learn a trade and be fed. Sometimes this is true, often it is a lie. Let me tell you about a real person. His name is Robert Blincoe. He was an orphan, and when he was 7 years old, he was sent from a London workhouse to a cotton mill in the countryside. This happened to thousands of children. Robert works from 5 in the morning until 9 at night. 16 hours. He is 7 years old. His job is to crawl under spinning machines while they are still running and collect loose cotton. The machines have sharp moving parts. One slip and he could be killed. He is terrified every single moment. The mill owner provides room and board, supposedly. The room is a crowded dormitory where dozens of children sleep on the floor like animals. The board is porridge for breakfast, sometimes with bits of rotten meat in it, bread and water for other meals. The children are always hungry. Some of them eat candle wax because they are so desperately hungry. When Robert makes a mistake, he is beaten, not a light slap. Serious beating with a leather strap that leaves welts and bruises. When he falls asleep at his machine from exhaustion, the foreman ties his ears to a beam above his head so he cannot sit down. If he slumps, his own weight tears his ears. Robert develops deformities from the work. His legs become bowed from standing so long on hard floors while his bones are still growing. His spine curves. His hands are constantly cut and bruised. He has scars all over his body from beatings and from burns from touching hot machinery. And Robert is not unusual. This is normal in factories. Thousands of children experience exactly what he experiences. Some of them die from accidents. Some die from diseases that spread in the crowded dormitories. Some are so traumatized they never recover mentally, even if they survive physically. The children do not go to school. They do not learn to read. They do not play. Childhood essentially does not exist for them. They are simply small, cheap labor. Women workers are treated better than children, but worse than men. Women are paid about half what men earn for the same work, sometimes less. Factory owners prefer women for textile work because they will work for lower wages and are supposedly more patient with the tedious work of watching machines. But women face constant sexual harassment. Foremen who have power over them demand sexual favors in exchange for not docking pay or not firing them. Women who refuse or complain are fired. There is no recourse, no complaint system, no justice. Pregnant women must keep working until they literally cannot stand anymore. There is no maternity leave. If you stop working, you lose your job, and your family loses that income. So women work until they go into labor. Some of them give birth right there in the factory and then return to work days later because they have no choice. The factory system is grinding up human beings and spitting them out broken. But the machines keep running, and the owners keep getting richer. Disease, death, and despair. Let me paint a picture of what disease looks like in an industrial city. Pick any major city: Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds. They are all basically the same. The year is 1848. A plague is sweeping through the slums. It is called cholera, and it kills with terrifying speed. A person wakes up feeling fine. By afternoon, they have violent diarrhea and vomiting. By evening, they are dead. Cholera can kill you in hours. What people do not understand yet is that cholera spreads through contaminated water. Nobody has discovered germs yet. The best doctors think diseases are caused by bad air, by miasma, by moral corruption. They have no idea that the water pump everyone shares is drawing water from a well that is contaminated with human waste from the privy 20 feet away. The cholera epidemic of 1848 kills over 50,000 people in Britain. Whole families are wiped out. Bodies pile up faster than they can be buried. The smell of death hangs over entire neighborhoods. But cholera is not the only killer. Typhoid fever spreads through contaminated water. Typhus spreads through lice that infest the crowded slums. Tuberculosis, called consumption back then, spreads through the air in crowded tenements and workshops. It makes you cough up blood and slowly wastes away your body over months or years. There is no cure. Smallpox causes hideous sores all over your body and kills about 30% of the people who catch it. Those who survive are often left blind or horribly scarred. Dysentery gives you bloody diarrhea until you die of dehydration. Pneumonia fills your lungs with fluid until you drown from the inside. Children die at shocking rates. In the worst slums, half of all children die before their 5th birthday. Half. Imagine that. Every other child dead before they learn to read. Life expectancy in industrial cities drops to 25 or 30 years. People are dying younger than they did before industrialization. Think about that. All this progress, all this wealth being created, and the average person is dying younger than their grandparents did. The rich, of course, do not live in the slums. They build nice houses in clean neighborhoods upwind from the factories. They drink clean water brought in from the countryside. They eat good food. They can afford doctors. Their children survive. They live into their 60s and 70s. The inequality is staggering. Factory owners are becoming millionaires. They build mansions. They travel to exotic countries. They live lives of incredible luxury. All while the workers who make their wealth possible are dying from preventable diseases in rat-infested slums. And yet, here is the complicated part. Even with all this suffering, people keep coming to the cities. The factories keep finding workers. Why? Because as bad as factory life is, life on the farm can be even worse. Rural poverty is grinding. At least in the city, you have a chance. Maybe you get lucky. Maybe you stay healthy. Maybe you save enough money to move to a better neighborhood. Maybe your children escape the factory and learn a trade. There is a possibility, however small, of something better. On the farm, there is just endless poverty with no escape. You are born poor, you work poor, you die poor. Your children are born poor, work poor, die poor. Forever. The city offers hope, even if that hope is often crushed. This is what makes the Industrial Revolution so complicated. It is not simply good or bad, it is both at the same time, creating massive wealth and massive suffering simultaneously. The pushback begins. But people are not passive victims. They start to fight back. And the first form of resistance is rage against the machines themselves. The year is 1811. In the countryside around Nottingham, textile workers are gathering in secret at night. They are organizing, and they are angry. Their traditional way of life is being destroyed by machines. Skilled weavers and craftsmen who spent years learning their trade find themselves replaced by factory workers operating machines. Wages are collapsing. Families are starving. They decide to strike back at what they see as the source of their problems: the machines. At night, groups of men with blackened faces and crude weapons raid factories and workshops. They smash textile machines with sledgehammers. They burn buildings. They threaten factory owners. They call themselves Luddites, named after a probably mythical figure called Ned Ludd, who supposedly smashed machines years earlier. The Luddite movement spreads across northern England. Hundreds of machines are destroyed. Factory owners are terrified. Some are attacked or killed. The government responds with overwhelming force. They send the army. That is right. The British Army is deployed against its own people to protect machines. Soldiers patrol factory districts. Luddites are hunted down. Trials are held. Many Luddites are hanged or transported to Australia as convicts. The movement is crushed brutally within a few years. But here is what is important. The Luddites were not stupid. They were not blindly opposed to progress. They understood that the machines were making their skills worthless and driving down their wages. They were making a rational response to economic devastation. They were fighting for their survival. The Luddites failed to stop the machines, but they represented the first stirrings of worker resistance. They showed that workers were not going to accept whatever happened to them passively. Over the next decades, workers start organizing in secret. Trade unions begin to form, groups of workers in the same trade who band together to demand better wages and conditions. At first, trade unions are illegal. The government sees them as dangerous conspiracies. Being in a trade union can get you arrested or transported. But the unions grow anyway. Workers realize they have power in numbers. If all the workers in a factory walk out together, the factory stops. No production, no profits. Factory owners have to listen. Strikes begin happening. Sometimes the workers win small concessions. But change comes slowly, too slowly for the people suffering. Then something shifts. Public opinion starts to change. How? First, journalists start investigating and writing about factory conditions. They sneak into factories. They interview workers. They publish shocking stories in newspapers. The middle class, people who are neither rich nor desperately poor, read these stories. They are horrified. They did not know how bad things were. Second, a famous writer named Charles Dickens writes novels that depict the lives of poor people and factory workers. Books like Oliver Twist and Hard Times make millions of readers feel the suffering. Suddenly, poverty is not just an abstract problem. It has faces and stories. Third, and this is crucial, photographers start documenting child labor. A photograph is powerful. You can argue with written descriptions. You can dismiss them as exaggerations. But a photograph of a 7-year-old girl standing at a factory machine, exhausted and frightened, that photograph cannot be denied. Those images shock the nation. Reformers start pushing for laws to protect workers. Religious groups get involved. They argue that treating workers this way is a sin, that Christians have a moral duty to help the suffering. Slowly, very slowly, the government begins to respond. The first Factory Act passes in 1833. Let me be clear, this law is tiny. It applies only to textile factories. It says children under 9 years old cannot work in textile mills. Children aged 9 to 13 can only work 8 hours a day. Children aged 13 to 18 can only work 12 hours a day. Notice what this means. The law is saying that working children 9 to 13 for 8 hours a day is considered an improvement. That is how bad things were. An 8-hour workday for a 9-year-old is seen as reform, but it is a start. It establishes the principle that the government can regulate working conditions. That worker welfare matters. More laws will follow over the decades, slowly, painfully slowly. But the arc is bending toward justice. The fight for better conditions will continue for the rest of the century and beyond. Trade unions will eventually become legal. Workers will win the right to form unions, to strike, to bargain collectively. The 8-hour workday, the weekend, workplace safety rules, all of these will be won through decades of struggle. But all of that is still in the future. Right now, in the middle of the 1800s, the British Industrial Revolution is at its peak, and it is about to spread to the rest of the world. America industrializes. Now we cross the Atlantic Ocean to America. The United States in the late 1700s is almost entirely agricultural. It is a young country, just won its independence from Britain. Most people are farmers. The country has vast wilderness, rich farmland, and relatively few people. It seems like the opposite of the crowded industrialized Britain we have been talking about. But there is something else America has. Ambition. Americans see what is happening in Britain and they want it. They want the wealth. They want the power. They want the machines. There is just one problem. Britain does not want to share. The British government has made it illegal to export textile machinery or detailed plans of how it works. They have made it illegal for skilled mechanics who know how to build the machines to leave the country. Britain wants to keep its industrial monopoly. They want to be the only country that can mass-produce cheap goods. But secrets cannot be kept forever. In 1789, a young British textile mechanic named Samuel Slater decides to take a huge risk. He has worked in the new factories. He knows exactly how the spinning machines work. He has memorized the designs because he cannot take written plans with him, and he decides to emigrate to America illegally. Slater disguises himself as a farm worker. He sneaks onto a ship. He arrives in America with nothing but the knowledge in his head, and that knowledge is worth a fortune. American investors are eager to fund him. In 1790, Slater builds the first successful cotton spinning mill in America in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. It is a copy of the British mills. Soon, more textile mills spring up across New England. America's industrial revolution has begun. But America's industrialization happens differently than Britain's. America has advantages that Britain did not have. First, America has enormous natural resources. Vast forests for lumber, iron ore, coal, copper, gold, oil. Though nobody knows how valuable it will be yet. The country is almost unimaginably rich in raw materials. As settlers push westward, they keep discovering more. Second, America has space. Lots of it. Cities can spread out. Factories can be built with room around them. America does not have Britain's problem of an ancient landscape already divided up and built on. Third, America has a culture that is even more welcoming to innovation than Britain. There is less rigid social hierarchy. A poor man with a good idea can become wealthy. The American dream is not just a saying. It reflects a real social mobility that is greater than in most European countries. And fourth, America has something really important. The idea of interchangeable parts. Let me explain this concept because it is crucial. In traditional manufacturing, every product is made by hand. Every part is slightly different. If your gun breaks and you need a new trigger, you have to find a gunsmith to custom make a trigger that fits your specific gun. Every gun is unique. But a man named Eli Whitney, famous for inventing the cotton gin, pioneers a different approach. What if you made every trigger to the exact same specifications? What if all the parts were identical? Then any trigger would fit any gun. You could have warehouses full of spare parts. Repairs become easy. Manufacturing becomes faster because you can have different workers making different parts and then just assemble them. This is the beginning of true mass production. It will eventually lead to assembly lines, to factories that can produce thousands of identical products. This idea will revolutionize manufacturing worldwide. America's textile industry grows rapidly. New England becomes covered in mills. Water power from New England's many rivers drives the machinery. Young women from farms, called Lowell girls after the mill town of Lowell, Massachusetts, come to work in the mills. At first, conditions are better than in British mills. The mill owners try to create a moral environment. The women live in supervised boarding houses. They have libraries and evening classes. This does not last forever, but early American mills are less brutal than British ones. Meanwhile, in the South, something different is happening. Or rather, something is not happening. The South is not industrializing. Why not? Because the South has built its entire economy on slavery. Southern plantations grow cotton using enslaved African Americans. This cotton is extremely profitable, especially after Whitney's cotton gin makes it easy to remove seeds from cotton fibers. Southern plantation owners are getting rich from cotton and slave labor. They do not want to industrialize. They do not need to. Why build factories when you have a labor force that you do not have to pay at all? Why invest in machines when you own people? This creates a huge divide in America. The North is industrializing rapidly. Free workers in factories, growing cities, increasing wealth. Immigrant labor coming from Europe. The South stays agricultural, dependent on slavery. Two completely different economic systems in the same country. This divide, this fundamental difference, will eventually lead to the Civil War. But that is a story for another time. By 1850, America is catching up to Britain. American railroads are spreading across the country. The Erie Canal, completed in 1825, connects the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean, opening up the entire Midwest for trade. American iron production is growing. American inventors are creating new technologies. Within another 50 years, America will surpass Britain. It will become the greatest industrial power on Earth. But in the mid-1800s, the revolution is still spreading. And it is about to reach other countries too. The revolution goes. Global Britain was first, America was second. But the Industrial Revolution does not stop there. It spreads to Europe, and then, remarkably, to one nation in Asia that will prove Europeans are not the only ones who can modernize. Germany industrializes in the 1850s through the 1870s. Before this, Germany is not even a unified country. It is a collection of small kingdoms and states. But when these states unify into one German empire in 1871, the new nation industrializes rapidly. Germany has excellent universities producing skilled engineers. Germany has coal and iron ore in the Ruhr Valley. German factories, especially steel mills and chemical plants, grow huge. Companies like Krupp become industrial giants, making everything from steel to weapons to railway equipment. Germany is actually more organized in its industrialization than Britain was. The German government actively supports industrial development. They build technical schools to train workers. They encourage cooperation between businesses and scientists. By 1900, Germany's industries are the most modern and efficient in the world. Germany has gone from divided agricultural states to an industrial powerhouse in just 30 years. France also industrializes, though more slowly than Britain or Germany. France has a different culture. French society values craft, artistry, beauty. The French are not as enthusiastic about dirty, noisy factories. French industrialization focuses on luxury goods, fine textiles, quality products. But France does build railways and factories and becomes an industrial nation, just on its own terms. Belgium and the Netherlands industrialize. Parts of Italy industrialize. Austria-Hungary begins to industrialize. Across Europe, the transformation spreads. By 1900, Europe is a continent of factories and cities and railways. But the most remarkable industrialization story is in Asia. In Japan. For centuries, Japan has been isolated from the rest of the world. The Japanese government, the Tokugawa shogunate, has forbidden contact with foreigners. Japan is feudal. Samurai warriors serve noble lords. Peasants farm rice. Technology has barely changed in hundreds of years. Then in 1853, American warships commanded by Commodore Matthew Perry sail into Tokyo Bay and demand that Japan open itself to trade. They have modern weapons, modern ships. The Japanese realize they cannot resist. They have to open up. This is a shock to Japanese society. Suddenly they see how far behind they are. Western nations have technology that makes Japan look primitive. Some Japanese leaders realize that if they do not modernize fast, Japan will be conquered and colonized like so many other Asian countries. So in 1868, a group of reformers overthrows the shogunate and restores power to the Emperor Meiji. This is called the Meiji Restoration, and these reformers make a stunning decision. They decide to deliberately industrialize Japan. They decide to transform their entire society from feudal to modern in one generation. It is the most rapid, most organized industrialization in history. The Japanese government sends students to Europe and America to study technology, government, military organization, everything. They hire foreign experts to come to Japan and teach. They build factories, railroads, telegraph lines. They create a modern education system. They build a modern military, and it works. In just 30 years, from 1870 to 1900, Japan goes from a feudal agricultural society to a modern industrial nation. By 1905, Japan defeats Russia in a war, proving that a non-Western nation can adopt Western technology and beat Western powers at their own game. Japan's success is unique. Many other countries try to industrialize but fail. Why does Japan succeed? Several reasons. Japan has a literate population because of traditional Buddhist schools. Japan has a culture that values education and discipline. Japan has a strong central government that can coordinate the transformation. And Japan has motivation. They know that if they do not modernize, they will be conquered. Fear is a powerful motivator. Meanwhile, other parts of Asia are not industrializing. China, which has been the most advanced civilization in Asia for thousands of years, does not industrialize in the 1800s. Why not? China is conquered and divided by European colonial powers. The Chinese government is weak and corrupt. There is no unified drive to modernize. China will not industrialize until the 20th century, and will pay a terrible price for this delay. India, which was once wealthy and had its own textile industry, is now a British colony. The British have deliberately de-industrialized India. They want India to provide raw cotton to British mills and buy British manufactured goods. They do not want India to have its own industries that would compete. India will remain agricultural and colonized until independence in 1947. So by 1900, the world is divided. A handful of industrialized nations in Europe, North America, and Japan are wealthy and powerful. Everyone else is poor and often colonized. This division will shape global politics for the next 150 years. It shapes global politics today. The Industrial Revolution has created a new kind of inequality, not just between rich and poor individuals, but between rich and poor nations. And this gap will be incredibly difficult to close. What changed forever? So now we step back. We look at the entire arc of what we have been talking about. The transformation from 1700 to 1900. From farms to factories. From muscle power to machine power. From a world lit by candles to a world powered by coal and steam. What actually changed? Let me count the ways. Life expectancy. In 1700, the average person lives to about 35 years. By 1900, life expectancy has increased to 50 years in industrialized nations. This is despite the terrible conditions in early industrial cities. Why the increase? Better food distribution means fewer famines. Eventual understanding of germs and sanitation reduces disease. Medical advances start saving lives. Not everyone benefits equally. The rich live much longer than the poor. But overall, humans are living longer. Speed. In 1700, the fastest any human has traveled is about 20 miles per hour on a galloping horse, and only for short distances. By 1900, trains routinely travel 60 miles per hour. Ships cross the Atlantic in days instead of months. The world has shrunk. Distance matters less. You can visit distant family. You can move to a different city or even a different country. This is a psychological revolution as much as a physical one. Cost of goods. In 1700, manufactured goods are expensive luxuries. That shirt that took 500 hours to make. Most people own 2 or 3 shirts their entire lives. By 1900, machine-made clothes are so cheap that even working-class people have multiple outfits. The same is true for furniture, tools, dishes, everything. Mass production has made material possessions affordable. Urbanization. In 1700, 90% of people are rural farmers. By 1900, in countries like Britain, half the population lives in cities. Some people have never even seen a farm. This changes everything about how society is organized. Urban people think differently than rural people. They are more exposed to new ideas, different cultures, rapid change. Power. In 1700, everything runs on muscle, wind, and water. By 1900, we have machines, engines, motors, generators. These machines can work 24 hours a day. They never get tired. They multiply human productivity by factors of hundreds or thousands. One person operating a machine can do the work of 100 people working by hand. Social class. The Industrial Revolution creates a large middle class that did not really exist before. Before, you had aristocrats and peasants, rich and poor, very little in between. Now you have factory managers, engineers, shopkeepers, clerks, teachers, people who are neither rich nor poor. This middle class will demand political power and eventually get it. Democracy expands partly because of the middle class. Literacy and education. As the world becomes more complex, as machines require operators who can read instructions, as businesses need clerks who can write, education becomes important. By 1900, most children in industrialized countries attend school at least for a few years. Literacy rates soar. An educated population thinks more critically, demands more rights, workers' rights. This takes a long time, but by 1900, the brutal exploitation of the early factory system has been somewhat curbed. Trade unions are legal. There are laws limiting working hours. There are basic safety regulations. Child labor, while not eliminated, is at least restricted. The weekend exists. Workers have fought for and won some protection. This fight continues, but progress has been made. But the Industrial Revolution also created problems. Terrible problems that we are still dealing with. Environmental destruction. All those factories burning coal. All that smoke. All that waste dumped into rivers. The Industrial Revolution began the process of polluting the earth on a massive scale. By 1900, rivers in industrial areas are dead. No fish, no life, just chemical waste. The air in cities is toxic, and we have started putting enormous amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, though in 1900 nobody understands that this will cause climate change. Inequality. Yes, the middle class grew. Yes, workers eventually gained some rights. But the gap between rich and poor also grew. Factory owners and industrialists accumulated wealth that would have been unimaginable to kings in earlier eras. Meanwhile, the working poor still struggled. This inequality created political tensions that would eventually lead to revolutions, labor movements, and ongoing debates about capitalism and socialism. Colonialism and exploitation. Industrialized nations used their superior weapons and organization to conquer much of the world. They extracted resources from colonies. They forced colonized peoples to serve European interests. The wealth of industrial nations was built partly on the exploitation of non-industrial ones. This legacy of colonialism affects global politics today. Loss of traditional ways of life. The village communities that had existed for centuries were destroyed. Extended families were broken up as young people moved to cities. Traditional crafts and skills disappeared. A certain kind of community and connection to the land was lost. Some people mourned this loss. Some still do. The question that remains. So here we are at the end of this long journey. From that candle in the darkness to the electric lights and screens of today. From Thomas the farmer to workers in Amazon warehouses and programmers at tech companies. We are all living in the world that the Industrial Revolution created. And there is one question that hangs over everything. The question that people have been debating for 200 years. Was it worth it? Was the suffering worth the progress? Were the slums and the child labor and the destroyed communities worth the modern comforts we enjoy today? Is the environmental damage worth the wealth we have created? There is no simple answer to this question. Anyone who tells you there is a simple answer is lying or has not thought about it carefully enough. On one hand, billions of people are alive today who would not exist without industrialization. Modern medicine, food production, sanitation, all of this comes from the Industrial Revolution. I am alive. You are alive. Our ancestors survived childhood diseases that would have killed them in 1700. We live longer, healthier, more comfortable lives than any generation in human history. But that comfort was built on the backs of people who suffered. Real people with names and faces and families. Children who died in factory accidents. Workers who coughed up their lungs from breathing poisoned air. Communities that were destroyed. And we are still paying the price in pollution and climate change. The truth is that the Industrial Revolution was not good or bad. It was transformative. It changed everything. It created new possibilities and new problems. It lifted some people up and crushed others down. It gave us electric lights and antibiotics and airplanes. It also gave us pollution and inequality and the weapons that made modern warfare so devastating. We cannot go back. Even if we wanted to, we cannot return to 1700. Too much has changed. The world of Thomas the Farmer is gone forever. But we can learn from what happened. We can learn that rapid change comes with costs. We can learn that progress for some often means suffering for others. We can learn that we need to think about WHO benefits from technological change, and WHO pays the price. The challenges the Industrial Revolution created, we are still solving them. How do we balance economic growth with environmental protection? How do we ensure that technological advancement benefits everyone, not just the wealthy? How do we protect workers in an era of automation and artificial intelligence? How do we clean up the pollution and reverse climate change? These are not new questions. They are the same questions people were asking in 1830. We just have different specific details. The fundamental tension between progress and justice, between innovation and tradition, between efficiency and humanity, these tensions go all the way back to that first steam engine pumping water out of a coal mine. Remember that single candle from the beginning? That tiny flame in the darkness? That candle was powered by a wick and some wax or oil. Simple, clean, but dim. So dim you could barely see. That candle became a gas lamp, brighter, but still small. Then it became an electric light bulb, much brighter, powered by generators driven by steam engines or water turbines. Now that light is everywhere. LED lights powered by electricity generated from fossil fuels or nuclear reactors or solar panels. The screen you are watching this on right now is a descendant of that candle. Information traveling at the speed of light. Images and sound and text from anywhere in the world delivered to your eyes and ears instantly. All of this, everything in your modern life, traces back to those years between 1750 and 1900 when everything changed. When humans figured out how to harness the energy stored in coal. When we built machines that could work without muscles. When we reorganized society around production and efficiency rather than tradition. The world we inherited is not perfect. It is not even close to perfect. But it is the world we have. And understanding how we got here, understanding the choices that were made and the costs that were paid, helps us make better choices about where we go next. Because right now, we are in the middle of another revolution. The digital revolution. Computers and the internet and artificial intelligence are transforming the world just as dramatically as steam engines did. And we face similar questions. Who will benefit? Who will suffer? How do we manage the disruption? How do we make sure that progress serves humanity rather than crushing it? The Industrial Revolution teaches us that these questions do not have easy answers, that change is painful and complicated, that we cannot stop change, but we can shape it. We can fight for justice. We can demand that workers be protected. We can insist that the environment be considered. We can refuse to accept suffering as the price of progress. The people who lived through the Industrial Revolution were not passive. They fought. Workers organized. Reformers campaigned. Journalists exposed injustice. Eventually, slowly, things improved. Not because improvement was inevitable, but because people made it happen. That is the lesson I want you to take away from this long journey through history. The future is not predetermined. It is not fixed. We create it through our choices and our actions. So when you look at your modern world, when you flip a light switch or ride in a car or order something online, remember the people who built this world. Remember Thomas the farmer. Remember Mary the factory girl. Remember Robert Blinko the child laborer. Remember the workers who organized unions. Remember the reformers who fought for change. They made choices, some good, some bad. Some they did not even realize they were making. And their choices created your world. Now it is your turn. What choices will you make? What kind of world will you create? What will your children and grandchildren say about the decisions you made? The Industrial Revolution is not just history. It is a mirror. It shows us who we are and what we are capable of, for good and for ill. And it challenges us to do better, to learn from the mistakes, to preserve the advances, to build a future that is more just and more sustainable than the past. That candle still flickers somewhere in the darkness of history, but now we have the light to see by. Let us use that light wisely. Thank you for watching all the way through this journey. If you found this valuable, if it changed how you think about the modern world, please leave a comment below. Tell me what surprised you most. Tell me what you think we should learn from the Industrial Revolution. Tell me how you think we should handle the technological changes happening right now. And if you want to go deeper, I have a whole series on the Second Industrial Revolution, when electricity and oil transformed the world again. But that is a story for next time. Until then, remember, history is not dead. History is not even past. History is the foundation we stand on. Understanding where we came from is the first step to deciding where we should go. Take care, and thank you for caring about history.